Hey, it feels different, right?
Hello and welcome to episode 11 of Fantasy Sports. Today I'm going to be doing the same thing I've been doing the past 2 weeks of the NFL. This third week I definitely think was the most entertaining so far as scoring, storylines, and I don't want to say injuries because there was 2 more major injuries. But on the side of teams that you were questionable about or that you were confident in, I think this week just furthered a couple of those truths and, really showed that the 0-3 teams are 0-3 teams for a reason, the 3-0 teams are 3-0 teams for a reason. So like I did, I'm just going to start from Thursday, head all the way into Monday. I might not focus on a couple games. Like I think the Dolphins game was self-explanatory, but I do want to cover some certain aspects of it. But starting with the Giants 49ers, I felt like that was just a pretty much gimme game. With Saquon being out, Daniel Jones looked lost on offense, whether it was the rush or the zone coverage. He just simply didn't seem like he knew what he was doing. I think he had 1 turnover in the game. It was a pick by the safety. And I remember, if I recall, it was on Isaiah Hodgins who read the route wrong. And he cut back in. But point being, the 49ers do look the part. I don't think them only putting up 30 was not impressive, but I just think the fact that they let them get 12, the Giants in general, although it was garbage time, could have been a little stronger. C-Mac looked really good. He looked different in the second half of the game. I know he tweaked his hamstring, but I don't think that has any effect going into week 4. But yeah, just a solid game on Thursday. Expected the 49ers to win at home. They came out and they dominated the whole game. Not much to really speak on that. But for the Falcons-Lions game, I think that was probably a really big game in terms of what you expected to see from the Falcons against a team that really held them to the passing. Obviously, we saw Bijan have a little bit of a setback. He didn't play as well. We saw Algier not get as many touches this week. Falcons didn't look that good on offense when they had to pass, and they did have to pass. And I think that's the biggest aspect to take away from the game. The Lions let Jameer get 17, or I think he had 19 total touches, but he had 17 total rushes, which is really good. Not only for fantasy owners, but just for the team in general. I'm pretty sure he averaged 4 yards a touch. Still really positive to see. But yeah, in general, Kyle Pitts and Drake London, again, are just lost on offense. And I think a part of it has to do with scheming, but part of it has to do with talent. I know Kyle Pitts gets open, but I feel like a majority of the reason why he doesn't get the touches he gets is because they make him a second option on an offense that needs him to be the first option. And although it is play calling, Desmond Ridder just isn't the quarterback to get him the ball. He's never his first read. He always comes back and winds up looking at Drake London, whether it be a deep ball, contested ball. Just in general, just Kyle Pitts gets lost out there, and I think that's the biggest aspect. Takeaway is just Desmond Ridder's connection with him and how that I don't think that's going to grow at all this year. From last year to this year, people expected it to get a little better. With that being said, Desmond Ridder definitely had more passing attempts. He didn't make any mistakes. He had 38 throws, 200 yards. Not really great air yardage, but he did really good. Regardless of what was asked of him. But yeah, definitely one of the more important games this weekend. Looking at the Chargers-Vikings game, this wasn't a big game. Obviously, one of the big injuries happened, Mike Williams. And I know a lot of people didn't want to see that. Do I think in fantasy terms it changes up a lot of things? Yes. Don't want to see Mike Williams get injured for a third time, though. But it definitely changes things for Johnson and Jordan Palmer. They step into like these wide receiver 2-3, roles just because of the way the offense runs around the deep ball, especially with Justin Herbert. Keenan Allen's been having a solid year, but I definitely think they need that comfort blanket of having someone that can go up and get it, which Mike Williams did, and I think Johnson's going to take that over. The Vikings, just really been a story of the turnovers. They were 0-3 or 11-0 last year in one-score games. They're 0-3 right now, and I think a lot of it had to do with luck. People don't want to, cut it up to that, but I think that's really what it was. Kirk Cousins looks the part. I think if they were 3-0 right now, I think Kirk Cousins would probably be top 2 in MVP just with the way he's playing. It seems as he's reading defenses really well. He misses a couple throws, like he missed one to Addison deep on the right this weekend. But Herbert, if anyone, looks the part, and I think when it comes down to what they need on offense, they just need Eckler back. He's been injured the past 2 weeks, and they do feel like they're missing that, especially with Joshua Kelly not rushing the ball as efficiently. I know Madison had a solid game, but he doesn't do anything that Dalvin Cook brought, like with the chunk plays and the receiving. He does have the most drops by a running back right now in the league. And I think that's just a change that the Vikings are going to have to adjust to. I know they traded for Cam Akers. They didn't get him any time this weekend, but I do like to see where that goes. Saints-Pack games, also a really important game. Derek Carr went down with a pretty big injury. I don't think it's season-ending from what they said. I think he tore his rotator cuff or something to do with his... It was something to do with his rotator cuff and or elbow, throwing arm. But I don't like to see him out for the season. I know Olave was having a big year with him. I think he'll still have a big year with Jameis, but I just don't think the offense will run as smoothly as it did with Derek Carr. So clearly, second half when Derek Carr went down, they didn't score a single point to the Packers 18 in the fourth. Jordan Love really has been, exactly a clone of Aaron Rodgers this year, and I think that's the best testament to him. Aaron Rodgers really coached him up, and I think Matt LaFleur has really coached him up. He doesn't get nervous under pressure, and I think that's the best part of his game right now and why his quarterback rating is so high. He doesn't make stupid throws. He doesn't make dumb mistakes. Sometimes he tries to fit the ball into too little tight of windows, but I don't think that's a bad thing by any means. It means he's confident. So I like to see that, and I do think they need Christian Watson back. He was definitely missing. The receivers were definitely lacking for the Packers this weekend, especially with the good Saints defense and coverage and in the pass rush. But yeah, that was a crazy game in the fourth quarter. Definitely really interesting to see what the Packers do on Thursday when they play the Lions. Texans-Jaguars. This was another really interesting game. CJ Stroud looks really, really good. Right now, I would say he's probably Rookie of the Year, just coming out of the draft and being the best quarterback. That's really important. And Trevor Lawrence has struggled from year 2 to year 3. He doesn't have really good air yardage. He doesn't seem to get the ball up, and he doesn't seem to have a good reaction time when pressure comes in his face. But with that being said, Travis Etienne, he looks the part. I mean, coming off of his rookie year, he got injured. He got the second year wasn't great with the ball when he came down to the goal line. He's looked the part in the goal line, rushing between tackles, very fast, catching the ball. So that's a positive. I think they're 1-2 right now, the Jaguars. But I'm not worried about it. I knew they were going to split the game with Texans. Texans have always dominated them in the regular season, which is how it's been. 37-17 was a little worrisome to see because the Texans defense isn't that great, but it's good enough to hold them. But I didn't think they were going to get a 20-point lead on them at any point with the way that the Jaguars have their way on offense. But not big takeaways from that game other than the fact Calvin really needs to get more touches. Travis Etienne looked the part, and CJ Stroud is definitely, I would say right now, Rookie of the Year. For the Broncos-Dolphins game, it's really been the story of Sean Payton and the defense. I feel like Russell Wilson has 100. I think he has 104 quarterback rating right now, which puts him above almost like Joe Burrow and Mahomes and all that, which is really impressive to see because he hasn't made many mistakes, and it looks though the team's falling behind because they get themselves in a situation where they can't get out of. Like, for instance, they just got down so fast against the Dolphins, and that's a testament to the Dolphins. I mean, they have the 4 fastest ball carriers this year so far. I'm pretty sure it's Devon, Tyreek, and Raheem so far, or the 4 fastest plays with three of the fastest ball carriers. With that being said, I think the Dolphins just look unstoppable right now. Putting up 70 points is just unheard of. I think it was the 3rd most points in NFL history, with that being, since 1966. But I think it was the most points scored since 1980 all time, which is just really impressive. I know a lot of that has to do with the way the offense runs through Tua, and Tua hasn't been touched yet, which is a big reason why he's the MVP frontrunner right now. He hasn't been touched, and I think Teron Armstead missed on Sunday. He missed the game. He wound up exiting early, just like Jalen Phillips. I know Jalen Phillips had an oblique injury, and he wound up leaving Sunday early as well. But definitely a really, really positive sign for the Dolphins to see Tua just healthy, not taking a lot of touches, getting the ball out quickly, extremely efficient on offense. And when he does make mistakes, they're very, very, very small. I don't think he's thrown an interception so far this season. Just really impressive to see. So to take away from that, I would definitely say Sean Payton needs a better coach of defense. I know he's a very offensive mind coached. But with that being said, you have people like Pat Surtain. I think he got burnt by Robbie Anderson this Sunday. So definitely raises questions on what's going on that side of the ball. Titans-Brown game and Bills-Commanders game, I'm not going to cover much. I mean, Commanders put up 3 points. The Titans put up 3 points. Derrick Henry looks like he's slow and old. Deshaun Watson looked like he probably played the best game that he's played so far as a Cleveland Brown. And for the Bills, just another day for Josh Allen commanding the offense. Sam Howell was concerning at first when he threw the interceptions, but man, that offensive line is just not good. It looked really good in the first 2 weeks, and I think that's why his pocket presence was getting more comforting. But you could see it this weekend. He wasn't confident in his throws. He stepped up a lot in the pocket, and then he would roll out. which just led to a lot of sacks. I think they had 9 sacks and 4 interceptions and led them to 3 points. Almost shut them out. Literally pretty much was a shutout until they just made that field goal at the end. But yeah, definitely a really impressive game by the Bills defense. But as much as it was the Bills defense, I think the time of possession in that game was just crazy. The Commanders never seemed to have the ball. So yeah, definitely really solid games for both the Browns and the Bills. And then I was going to cover the Patriots-Jets game, but I think at that point it's just talking about how Zach Wilson hasn't commanded the offense yet. And I think he'll get his feet under him, but so far it just doesn't look like they got the player they wanted. For the Colts and Ravens game, this was definitely interesting to me. Gardner Minshew came in and he looked confident, and Zach Moss, I think, ran the ball 30 times for 122 yards. The Ravens on offense looked really good for the most part. Lamar was making really good throws. He didn't make any mistakes. I think he had 100 yards rushing with 2 rushing touchdowns. But they're missing a running back. They just are. Melvin Gordon was slow. Justice Hill was injured. When they put in Kenyon Drake, I think he fumbled. It just didn't look like they had that running back that they need. I wish they went out and traded for Cam Akers or signed Kareem Hunt when everything went down with J.K. Dobbins. But with that being said, Zay Flowers looks really good. I know OBJ went down as well. Marlon Humphrey was out. Just a lot of injuries on that team. And it seems like that happens every year with the Ravens. It just happens to get the injury bug. But still a really solid game, although the Colts wanted an OT. Justin Tucker wound up missing, I think, 2 field goals. And that's unlike him. So I wasn't really too worried about it. I think the Colts look good. I think the Colts are 2-1 right now. And the fact that they won a game without Anthony Richardson is really positive for their defense as well. Bears, Chiefs, Justin Fields. I talked about this same thing last week. Now, Justin Fields said he was going to come out and play his game this Sunday, and he definitely played his game. I think he only completed 4 total passes, and I think he wound up getting his bell rung a little at the end of the game. His head was wobbly. He wound up wobbling off the field with DJ Moore. But Patrick Mahomes looked good. The whole Taylor Swift storyline and all that with Travis Kelce. It was definitely one of the more interesting games. But Chiefs look the part, and Isaiah Pacheco was probably the best player coming out of that game. The way he ran the ball was just really impressive. I know that their rotation has been quite different with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jerick McKinnon. But Jerick McKinnon looks fast. I think on any other given team, he would just play the part of Alvin Kamara. And that's why I think it's so impressive that the Chiefs take these, backup role players and just put them into an offense that can thrive. And people want to put it on Eric Bieniemy, the new head coach of the Commanders, but I really think Andy Reid has had it figured out for a while now with taking players that you don't expect a lot of production of and putting them to use. So definitely a really solid game. Biggest upset of the weekend was probably the Cardinals and Cowboys. I mean, you could argue that it was Colts-Ravens just because the Ravens, but they did have injuries. The Cowboys had no injuries other than Trevon Diggs in practice this week. And the Cardinals came out and they dominated from right off the bat. Cowboys were always fighting from behind. They couldn't hide behind their defense this game. And it wasn't like Dak played a bad game by any means. But the Cardinals outplayed them. And they honestly outplayed the Giants last week too until they got blown out in the second half. So I think the Cardinals, it's funny because I think the Cardinals were the preseason or preseason favorites for last team to win a game on odds. They were minus. And now it's looking like clearly with the way they played week 2 and 3, they look like a solid team that if they get Kyler Murray back and when they get him back, they'll be very good. For the Steelers-Raiders game, that was a very positive game. Being a Steelers fan myself, I really liked what we saw out of Kenny Pickett. I still do think the play calling by Matt Canada was really bad. Najee played a really good game. He had a really efficient rushing game, and I was excited to see that. But just the way we controlled the ball in the second half was really odd. We had a lot more big plays that we went for, and I like that with Calvin Austin. Still, the short yard stuff is just bad. I think we ran the same slant with George Pickens 4 plays in a row, and he caught it twice, but it's just the play calling is so terrible. And we can't keep getting bailed out by the defense. It's just he threw, I think there was 4 turnovers in the game for the Raiders, and we only came away with 23 points. We should have it shouldn't even been a 5-point game with 4 turnovers and with the way the defense is playing. Although Devontae Adams had a really good game. It's confusing because you expect them to come in and game plan and change for different teams, and then you see Matt Canada run the same different plays in different formations. It's just odd that we keep them around. But really positive to see the Steelers be 2-1 after starting off slow against the 49ers. But it's the 49ers. You expect that. Monday Night Football, I feel like this again was a really interesting night. The Eagles are 21-1 now in their last regular season games playing with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts came out and dominated. A.J. Brown got his touches that he was worried about from last week after everything that went down. And the Buccaneers, they didn't look terrible. I wouldn't say Baker looked bad by any means, but he obviously looked like someone playing a Super Bowl team last year. And although Baker's a great quarterback, just, the offense sometimes looks slow with Rachaad White running Chris Godwin as the slot. Chris Godwin, I feel like with the knee injuries, is past his prime, and Rachaad White can't run through tackles at all. I mean, he had a hole in the second quarter that was so huge, and you expected him to just, get on his horse and just run right through everyone. There wasn't even like a defender within like 5 yards of him, but he wound up running into the linebacker. He just doesn't really have the vision, I don't think. But with that being said, I don't think the Buccaneers are a bad teams by any means, but just, playing against the Eagles is going to be a hard game. But the Eagles looked really, really good. And for the Bengals-Rams game, it wound up being 16-19, but it was really not a close game at the end of the game or in the second half with the way the Bengals defense was playing. I think they wound up having 7 sacks and 2 interceptions. Really impressive game by Jamar Chase after having really 2 bad games, but that's partly on Joe Burrow and that offense. T. Higgins disappeared again, and I've been saying for the longest time, I don't think T. Higgins fits in this offense. He just finds a way to disappear in big games, or not big games, but games in general. Obviously, he had the big week 2, 2 touchdowns, 87 yards. But just the way he plays and the way he goes up against certain cornerbacks, it's like he lets himself get a lot of outside coverage. And I feel like a majority of how that happens to be with the size. He's a big receiver. He's like 6'4", and he doesn't really read the inside. And I feel like that's why he disappears, because they game plan, they let him get that inside help. He tries to go outside. He goes up for those balls, and they just get broken up. But Matt Stafford looked really good. Tutu looked really good, and I think Tutu's going to wind up being better than Puka. I think Puka had a really good game. Still, with that being said, he had that big catch at the end of the game. But Tutu looked really good. He's really fast. When Cooper Kupp gets back, I think the Rams are going to be a solid team. Defense still looks a little shaky when Aaron Donald isn't out there. I think he missed a total of 6% of all defensive plays. But it was still really impressive to see by both teams, put up a competitive game in a game that you would expect to be not competitive at all. Looking to the next week, like I said, Lions-Packers, that's a really good game. Ravens-Browns, within the division. Buccaneers-Saints. Dolphins-Bills is probably the best game of the weekend if I had to take a guess. Chiefs-Jets would have been a great game in week 4, but now it's not. Yeah, definitely Ravens and Browns and Dolphins and Bills are 2 of the better games to look forward to. Not a really great week. I know Broncos and Bears is going to be a tough matchup. But yeah, just a lot that happened in the NFL this week. Like I say, it's every week there's just a different story to tell with different teams and different players. Just certain things change. But again, with the injuries, it's terrible to see Mike Williams and Derek Carr go down. I'm not sure if Mike Williams is going to get re-signed now. I know that was a big question in the offseason, but he never wound up getting the money. And it's the same thing kind of like in the Mike Evans situation, so I'm interested to see that. And I'm really hoping Derek Carr can get back out there after they were starting to. They would have been 3-0 if he wound up finishing that game. So that's terrible to see. But yeah, I hope you guys are just as excited for week 4 as I am. And I appreciate you guys tuning in. And as always, check in next Wednesday. Thank you.